Sergeant. For my capstone senior year project, I did what is titled Preserving History, and I'm going to be talking about protecting cultural artifacts from theft and destruction. So to begin, I'm just going to give an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. The first thing is art crime and history, the different historical instances of which art crimes have been perpetrated, preventative organizations such as national ones and international ones. Purposeful destruction, ones that have been happening in the Middle East, as well as other Western examples and throughout history as well. And I'm going to talk about the application of science, what can be done after items are destroyed, and what can be done after items are stolen. So first, these are my overarching questions. The first one has to deal with why should we prioritize art crimes over things such as the drugs market, the weapons market, and or loss of human life in general, and conflict as well. And the second one is who owns cultural property, what defines where cultural property should exist and where should museums keep them, such as what should be done if they're in an area of conflict. So I'm just going to ask you guys a couple questions. What do you, okay. When you think of France, you think of the Eiffel Tower or perhaps the Mona Lisa. Even though the Mona Lisa is Italian, it's housed in France. How about Egypt? Probably think of the Great Pyramids of Giza or any Egyptian art such as hieroglyphics or the Death Mask of Tutankhamun. Now I can see why you were getting really upset with this. Yeah. China, you can think of either the Great Wall of China or Chinese calligraphy. This is to prove that whenever you think of art or whenever you think of a nation, they're synonymous with each other. So when you think of America, for example, you automatically think of, the Statue of Liberty or the Washington Monument. The United Kingdom, you can think of perhaps Big Ben or Buckingham Palace. Italy, the Roman Colosseum. So you can do this with any nation. Whenever you think of a nation, you think of the culture it produces. So that shows you that nation, whatever a nation is, the culture is the same, such as art. So what is art? It has a lot of definitions. You know, can you guys just name a few things what art is to you guys? Yeah, it can be anything. So typical ones are paintings, songs. I know I'm not crazy, that's not a song, but there's a story behind it. Historical artifacts, forms of expression, anything appealing to the eye, and no offense to Pablo Picasso, but I don't think that should be part of a category of what should be pleasing to the eye. So what the point I'm trying to make is art has no not one definition. A generic one is anything that is appealing to the eye or that has any sort of practical use. I'm not a big fan of that definition, but it's something in general. So art is also used to show forms of expression. It's used to show emotions. It's also where you can receive emotions. In 1913, after the Rite of Spring was performed by students in Paris, riots ensued. Now, Paris, usually there's always riots, but that was because of this art. So it can make you feel incredibly happy, or it can make you feel so much so that you want to start a riot. Also, art is used, history. There's a lot of stuff that we know about history from art, such as clothing. We know that Troy was a city from art, and that they later proved. So art can be used to find historical facts, it can be used to find stuff about the culture before, and it can also be used to show stories, such as the biblical stories. That's why so many biblical stories are actually presented in pictorial form, is because they can use, people who are not literate can easily see what the story is trying to entail, and that's why a lot of stories and stuff are painted as well. So art theft is nothing new. The most common one occurred in Egypt. This was Egyptian tomb looting happening in 3000 BC, where tomb raiders would break into newly buried kings and steal gold or anything worth of value. So this has been happening since 6,000 years ago. Another famous one is the Mona Lisa theft in 1911. It was returned in 1913. After an Italian man stole it from the Louvre, and he was a worker, and he literally took the Mona Lisa off the walls, hid it under his coat, and walked out of the museum. So this is also to show that this is also why the Mona Lisa is so incredibly popular. So art theft, even though it's horrible, is also can be sort of proactive for making culture and art so popular, as that's why the Mona Lisa is popular today. Another one, which is probably the most famous example, is Nazi plunder, which happened during World War II, probably when it started when Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany in 1933, and they stole many things such as the Amber Room, which has been lost to history during the Dresden bombings, as well as the Stonebreakers and the Madonna. So art crimes, usually when you think of it, is jewelry, paintings, sort of anything. But it can be more than that. It can be anything from instruments, statues, anything worth of cultural value is essentially what an art crime is. So the most common one, the least common one is destruction, and it can either be purposeful destruction or destruction after being stolen, such as Caravaggio's The Nativity, which was stolen in 1969, which they believe has been destroyed because it's much easier to destroy the artifacts than hold on to them if they're hot in the market. Though, however, the more common one is theft. The biggest theft in world history is the Isabella Gardner Museum, where over $500 million worth of art was stolen. 13 paintings were stolen. One of a Vermeer, which is only one of 34 in the world, was stolen, as well as 3 Rembrandts and 5 Degas. So that one is still unsolved, and it's as I mentioned, the largest one. So the FBI technically classifies art crimes as anything worth over $2,000 that was either destroyed or stolen. So art crimes is actually a very serious offense. It's the 4th largest criminal enterprise in the world, behind drugs and armed robbery. I don't know what the other one is. So it follows the 1979 theory proposed by Cohen-Felsen, where the first one is there's a motivated offender. Usually, Hollywood portrays art theft, people who perpetrate art crimes as aficionados, people who have a love for the art, but it turns out that they're just people who are in it for the money. They usually just an intermediate step where they'll steal an object and then resell it quickly. Robert Whitman from the FBI says that none of these art crimes are about the love for the painting, they're just about the money. Another one is that art is a suitable target. While banks put all of their resources and their assets in a vault, museums display them on the walls, making them a very easy target to go for, and they are also worth a lot of money. When the business cycle goes through recessions and expansions, the art market does not change. So no matter what the market is like, art is still going to be worth as much as it was probably 100 years ago. It might even expand in value. And then another one is a lack of guardianship. Even though there's state-of-the-art security systems, it's been proven time and time again that electronic systems do not work. And another one is, obviously there's guards, museum guards, but usually museum thefts are perpetrated by people who have taken jobs as either police officers or museum guards. So usually the first line of defense is the one that gets pushed through the first. It's also associated with the drugs market, as people will often trade drugs for these paintings, making it very easy to obtain drugs. It's also, paintings can be carted across borders very easily because it's not illegal to hold a painting, and essentially you can get these drugs for free, as it did not cost anything to break into a museum and steal anything. Armed robbery is another one. These are the 2 men that are supposedly have taken stuff from the Isabella Gardner Museum, and this is the Oslo National Portrait Gallery. And another one is white-collar crime. White-collar crime is anything that has to do with CEOs or big government business. They're usually the ones who are in fraud, and 40% of the underground painting market is said to be forgeries. So the first art crime team we're going to talk about is the FBI's. It was implemented in 2004 after the looting of the Baghdad Museum, where over 13,500 items were stolen. They have 16 special agents. They all reconvene for a meeting once a year and go through special training. They have recovered 14,850 items. worth over $165 million since their 13 years of being implemented. And they also have a National Historic Art File. And I've looked at it, it's about 70 pages of just pages and pages of art that has been taken over the years. It's a complete list of everything that has been taken, but it's not necessarily complete. There's either like really grainy photos on it, or there's no photos at all. So even though they're trying to show the public what has been stolen and trying to show people have due diligence on what's been missing, it's not a complete and comprised list. So here are the top 10 FBI art crimes. The number one is the Baghdad Museum, and the second one is the Isabella Gardner Museum. They've been happening since 1969, and they've been all the way since 2011. As you can see, they happen internationally: Italy, Baghdad, Boston, California, Rio, and there's only been one that's been recovered, which was from the Van Gogh Museum robbery. So the next one is UNESCO. That stands for United. It's a company, not a company. It's a committee under the United Nations Council, and it stands for United Nations Educational, Science, and Cultural Organizations. So that's a very large umbrella. The thing that they're most famous for is their November 14th, 1970 treaty to stop the Convention on the Means of Prohibiting and Preventing Illicit Import and Export or Transfer of Ownership of Cultural Property. This is known as the first big international way to stop any illicit trafficking. This was the first big international one, and this is the first time that cultural property was ever described. They also deal with the restitution of cultural property and illicit trafficking of cultural property. They've actually still been working at a conference on March 24th of this very year. They decided that all art crimes are now classified as war crimes as well. So not even making it a national importance, but international security as well. So I've been talking a lot about cultural property, and I think I should just stop for a minute and describe what it is. This is technically described by UNESCO, and it can range anywhere from books, items of literature, technology, songs, paintings, anything of a historical interest, anything that's over 100 years old. Technically, nations classify them themselves, and technically you can also have parts of anatomy be cultural property, such as mummies and or other things. So, so who owns artifacts? That's a big question. People are still trying to figure out what that is. And countries want their property back. So during British colonial times and American colonial times, there were a lot of expeditions into Greece and Egypt where they took a lot of artifacts, such as the Parthenon is probably the most famous example, where after the Parthenon was destroyed in 1817 after a gunpowder explosion, British officials went in and they took half of the remaining statues and then put them in the British Museum. Currently, Greece is still trying to get their artifacts back. Britain has released a formal statement saying that they believe that the art can be best appreciated in their city, and they believe that they allow for the best research to be done, and they allow for the best cultural appreciation to be done. Greece wants to reunite the statues, and they want basically their culture back after Britain took it back during colonial times. We are also not innocent in this. We've taken multiple things from Greece and Egypt. The Metropolitan is probably the biggest proponent of this, and but we've given a lot more stuff back than Britain has. Egypt has been much more successful than Greece. They have gotten back the bust of Queen Nefertiti from the Berlin Museum, and Zahi Hawass has been the main proponent of this, trying to get back Egypt's cultural heritage, and he's actually severed ties with the Louvre, showing that they're much more serious about getting their cultural heritage back. And then so this is show, a lot of people think that these artifacts belong to the nations that they're originally from. UNESCO also has a World Heritage Map. To be a site, you must have one of these 6 criteria. You have to be a masterpiece of human genius, represent an important interchange of cultural values, and an outstanding example of tech and human history. These are the cultural definitions. UNESCO World Heritage Sites can also be parts of ecology. There's 1,052 properties overall, and 814 of these are cultural. 55 of these are endangered. However, most of these are national parks, so they're not super. They're not. But this is what I talked about. But oops. These two here, this is from Bangladesh, and this is one of the ones in danger in Georgia. As you can see, it's very Eurocentric, with a lot in the Middle East, and a lot of the ones being in danger being from the Caribbean and being from the Middle East. So this is the oldest international form of an art crime team. They were founded after World War II in 1946. They do fighting illicit traffic, and they also have their version in FBI National Stolen Art File. They have a red list, but that's organized by countries. They have a museum's emergency program, so they do stuff in when items have been destroyed by either war or nature. Usually it's nature, not necessarily war. But they also deal with minor refurbishments in the British Museum or Buckingham Palace. So they do things from both ends of the spectrum, either stuff that have been leveled by earthquakes or stuff that just needs minor touch-ups. They also deal with art and cultural heritage mediation, which is a big deal from who owns these cultural properties. They usually act as a third party through through conflict resolution, and they will act as an intermediary. They also deal with loans. They write up loans for museums to museums, and they also handle the transportation of cultural artifacts. The first national art crime team was the Italian CARABINIERI. It was founded in May 1969, and they like to boast that they were before the UNESCO illicit trafficking treaty. They're Italian, it's the oldest in the world, and they deal with archaeology, fakes, antique dealing, and contemporary art. They're also very self-serving, as they are one of the ones that want their property back, because if you go to a museum here, usually you have a Roman part, and that's why they're trying to get all their Roman stuff back into Italy. They've gotten stuff back from the Getty Museum, Cleveland Museum of Art, and the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. They also, in 2009 alone, recovered $240 million worth of stolen art, which is significantly more than the FBI has done in their 13 years of implementation. 3 out of 4 of the art crimes that they deal with are archaeological, and usually they deal with archaeological sites that are working in clandestine manners, such as they don't have permission to be working. But since they have been working, 2009, 76% of the archaeological thefts have been down, and museum thefts are down 29% in 2009 alone. So now we're going to talk about iconoclasm, which is the purposeful destruction of images, usually in a political or religious manner. The famous one is the Byzantine iconoclasm, which was dealing with the Muslims and the Catholics, where they defaced a lot of religious people, or defaced a lot of religious art. Chinese iconoclasm, Protestant Reformation, and the English Reformation all had to do with religious. So before 1600, they all had religious purposes. Now it's the French Revolution, American Revolution, and the Russian Revolution, where these were taking down statues. It was mostly taking down statues of leaders in a country. However, Winston Churchill is also a person who's gone through with iconoclasm, as he had a portrait that he thought looked ugly and old and destroyed 2 years after his death. So it's not just about religious, it's anything that has to deal with the purposeful destruction of images, however, usually religious and political. So the first one for modern day was the Taliban, and I want to remind you that this is a extremist group, and it does not reflect the views of most Muslims in the world. They destroyed the Buddhas of the Iman back in 2001 in Afghanistan. They rolled in with tanks, they shot up the cliff of the Buddhas, and then after that didn't work, they stuck dynamite in it and blew it up. And This was part of the edicts that they released saying that all non-Muslim art will be destroyed in the world. After this, after the huge international outrage, they sort of stopped. The only other forms of iconoclasm happened in the Kubal Museum when they destroyed other Buddhas, but they haven't been a main perpetrator of art crimes since the Buddhas have been destroyed. However, they could have been saved. Both India, Japan, and America, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, stated that they would gladly take these Buddhas away from the site, and then they would house them themselves. They declined, and then they eventually destroyed them. So, what we've been talking about with where do these cultural items belong? This is another part of where they could have been saved if they were exported out of the country. The most recent one is ISIS and iconoclasm. Again, this is another extremist group, and this is not how most Muslims feel in the world. In fact, many of them have released statements saying that they do not condone this behavior. It first started in 2004. These are probably the most famous examples of what they've been doing. The Mosul Museum is a video I show, but I don't believe I have time. So the reason that they go through this iconoclasm is they want to destroy any history or any cultural heritage that was before Islamic time. So they're going after the Syrian culture, which I think it's not just one of national importance, but it should be one of international importance, because Mesopotamia is where Iraq is today and is known as the cradle of fertilization. It was the first large major civilization in the world, and I think that it's not just Iraqi culture that we need to be protecting, but it's also our culture as well. Nimrud was another example. That is the Assyrian capital, and right now Palmyra, which is in Syria, actually is still occupied by ISIS. However, it's not just Islamic groups that are doing forms of iconoclasm. In Hungary, after Stalin was killed, they tore down a statue of Stalin. We are actually not innocent. During the Battle of Baghdad, we destroyed a monument of Saddam Hussein. I really like this picture because it really shows, what iconoclasm is about. It's about erasing the history before and putting yours in the center front. Another one is the Louvre machete attack, which happened February 3rd of this year, where a crazed Egyptian ran into the Louvre and attacked a security guard with a machete, and he also had spray paint on him as an attempt to destroy some of the Louvre artwork in a symbolic attack against France, which again shows that this culture is connected to the nation symbolically. Another one is sometimes destruction of art doesn't have to happen through iconoclasm, it just is an unfortunate victim in war. So all of these that I'm showing are also UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So this is the ancient cities of northern Syria. This is what it looks like today. This is Bosra. This is what it looks like today. And probably the most famous one is the city of Aleppo and the Great Mosque of Aleppo. This is what it used to look like before the conflict. This is what it looks like now. In fact, all 6 World Heritage Sites are in danger. Over 1,000 ancient souk markets have been destroyed in Aleppo itself, 140 historic buildings, and 60% of the old town have been completely leveled by the fighting in Syria. Bosra and other Roman artifacts, because this is actually Roman, are in danger, so that makes the Italians get involved with what's been going on. And the citadel of Aleppo has also been used as a base for fighting. So not only are these, not only are they bystanders in this fight, but they're also being put in the front lines, making them much more susceptible to being destroyed. So what do you do after artifacts have been lost to history completely? Well, there's other things. You can apply science to it. Now, after things have been destroyed completely, there's nothing much you can do. There's no way to get it back. You can look at pictures, but it's nothing like looking and seeing it for the first time. So that's what Italian companies and the UNESCO is trying to do for the lost arts of Elba, Palmyra, and Nimrud. So it's called Project Rising from Destruction, and it was displayed in the Colosseum. So what they do is they take pictures of they take pictures of the art, usually from U.S. military officials, or they take it from tourists in general. They'll make a scaled down model in a 3D modeling process, and then they'll scale that up, they'll 3D print it, and then they'll cover it in this plastic, and then they also cover it with a rock slurry, and then which they'll go with hand finish to get a detail. I mean, they want to be so they want to be so close to what it used to be before that they'll put in cracks. So they just want to make sure that it looks exactly what it did before. Another famous one is 2 Roman statues that were destroyed from Syria, and then the ceiling of Bel from Palmyra. So what I really like about this project is it completely takes away the power from Syria. It completely takes away the power from ISIS. What they were trying to do is they were trying to destroy what used to be there before the Islamic State, and they were also trying to show their power off by showing, like, look at what we can do by destroying these artifacts. By doing stuff like this, by bringing it back to life, it shows that you can take away their power. You can try to destroy whatever you want, but we're still going to keep doing stuff like this that brings artifacts back to life, so people can still view them all around the world. Another thing is 3D scanning. There's the more popular ones are non-contact, so there's no risk to any of the artifacts. What happens is laser lights are shown on it, and it creates point clouds in which they can show any discrepancies between the surfaces, which then can be traced into a digital model, and then they can create a digital model. This allows for any fine details that can't be seen by the human eye, or even looking through stuff. So we can see what lies beyond a wall or any artwork or any paintings without actually having to destroy them. Museums can also get a digital database. They can make a digital database. The Met uses this a lot, and the British Museum uses this a lot, so that people can view them from their own homes and in a 3D interactive way that you can also view in virtual reality. So they're also using this for what's been happening in Syria and in Iraq through what used to be called Project Mosul, but now it's called RHS. So what they do is they have citizens, just like you and me, that have 3D modeling skills. They can take images and they can create their own models in this project called Sketchfab, so that people can see like what they used to look like in the comfort of their own homes, and then they can then we can take these to be used for 3D printing. There's also 3D light projection, which when stuff is too big to 3D print, or when you can't necessarily 3D print paintings, so they can light project them back on. This is also what has been done with the Buddhas of Baeman, because there's been talk about 3D printing them, but UNESCO has decided that they're simply too big. They're 160 feet tall, so they decided they're just going to project light of what they used to look like back in the 3rd century. There's also, museums use this a lot to show what the paintings used to look like before they've just been worn down through normal environmental effects. So this is the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and then the Buddhas of Baeman. Again, this takes away the power from the people that have been trying to destroy them. So there's also, you can also use science to prevent art thefts. Okay, so can you guys point out which one is the fake and which one's real?
Is the fake the more muted one?
Yes, you're correct. To be honest, I don't think I could do this without having known which one they look like. So fakes can obviously look very similar to what they did before. In history, the Mona Lisa, as I mentioned, was stolen in 1911. The Italian's accomplice actually made 6 different versions you can see here, and then sold them off to different collectors. So while the Italian man still had the Mona Lisa, this other man was selling off fakes of the Mona Lisa. And I think it's kind of funny because they're all different sizes, and I feel like that would be like a red flag right there, but apparently not. So what you can do is you can use chemical analysis to detect fakes. The most common of this is putting a little speck of paint in a particle accelerator, or using mass spectrometry, or using mass spectrometry where you determine what the chemical makeup of the paint is. And if the paint dates back to the time when the painter was actually alive, then that makes sense. But if the paint is actually if it's after when the painter died, then obviously it's a fake. The most common of this is Prussian blue, which was found in 1704, which was 35 years after Rembrandt's death, and this was actually used to find a fake of a Rembrandt. So if you know that the paint doesn't make sense to the timeline, then it's possibly a fake. Another thing that they do is they will use gas spectrometry and electroscanning microscopes to determine the chemical makeup of the carbon. So they can carbon date carbon found in the canvas, so they can find out when it was grown, and so then they know when exactly the canvas was, what year the canvas had originated from. Another technology is smart water. This is a British company that they're more working on crimes in general, but they have been recently adding it to the art crimes world. So what it does is it prevents theft. So it's an odorless and colorless chemical deterrent, which carries its own special forensic code. So when you purchase smart water and you put it on something, the forensic analysis is unique to your purchase. So whenever you put it on something, it's unique to you and it's unique to your location, which makes things easy to give back to people after things have been stolen, or it's also shown up under a black light. So when you show a black light, you can see who has touched an object that has smart water on it and where the smart water has gone. So you can easily see who stole what, and so essentially getting rid of like, oh, did you do it? No, I didn't. Another thing is, so now they've been putting it on historical artifacts. Not the most recent one, but one in the UK was the Historic Castle of Leeds, saying that they have now put smart water on their cultural objects, making them a lot less desirable to steal. They also have a joint project with the United States for protecting Syrian culture. So there's no damage to the artifacts at all, and when you brush this smart water on, you can see what has been illegally carted out of Syria as it is now, as UNESCO has made any traffickings from Syria illegal in 2015. So I actually contacted Smart Water, and they gave me a long list of chemical analysis they've done before. The most recent one that they sent me was where they tested any sulfuric gases when you put it on chemicals such as silver. When you put it on metals such as silver or copper, they brushed it on to see if any poisonous sulfuric gases came out, and luckily no sulfuric gases came out. So it's still safe to use for anything at all. So if you're familiar with the capstone, you know that we have to have an action plan. So I have decided that I'm going to be working with the Rutland Historical Society as well as graveyard revitalization. I've been doing this graveyard revitalization since I was in 7th grade. I think that Rutland has a very unique and prosperous history. In fact, we've had 2 presidents come and visit, Theodore Roosevelt and Harry Truman in the past. And we've been around since before before the American Revolution. So we have to, it starts with us. We had to protect our history. We had to protect our culture. If a lot of these items disappear, we wouldn't know what Rutland was like before we came. So I think, while I can't go to Syria and tell people to stop taking out artifacts, I can still work from a local level and work on our history within Rutland. I really enjoyed doing this. Kiana can attest to it. She did it. It's a lot of fun. We get to go around and we cut down trees, anything. We'll even restore gravestones themselves that have been kicked down due to vandals or just neglect. So I had a lot of fun doing it. I'm doing it again this year with Mr. Lindgren. So any questions? Yeah?
You just did a good job. I had no
Oh,
questions.
thank you. So just a quick recap. Should art crime be an international priority? Through doing my research, I found that art crime is a serious problem. You know, it's the 4th largest criminal enterprise in the world, and even though it's not something as serious as the loss of human lives, it's something very serious with our history. And how will we know what we're looking for if we don't have these items? Another thing is, you know, who owns this cultural property? Do the Parthenon statues belong to Britain, or do they belong to Greece? And I think that's one thing that a lot of people have to clarify, which a lot of policymakers haven't. UNESCO hasn't necessarily decided, oh, it's the location that decides where the property is, or it's the, or it's who can take care of these, objects are the people who really truly need to have them. Such as, you know, the Buddhas of Bariman, they could have been saved if they weren't, if they were allowed out of the country. A lot of the Syrians don't want to move any of their culture out of the country, but, you know, it could save it. The buildings, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do, but a lot of the artifacts, they can be saved. And, you know, so it's this whole question, you know, who owns this cultural property?